Thanks, Will. At this point, I actually would just like to take the opportunity to thank Charles Sturt University for providing the space for us to use today. As well, they hosted last year's event, and so many thanks to Charles Sturt University, and as well to their staff who have been incredibly helpful in making today's event happen. At this time as well, I also wanted the members of the Symposium Planning Committee to please stand and be recognized for their incredible hard work. Thank you, ladies. There was many months of planning, and we appreciate all of the effort that you made. So it is my sincere delight and pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, Jim Grieve. As Assistant Deputy Minister of the Early Learning Division for the Ontario Ministry of Education, Jim is leading up the implementation of full-day early learning for 4- and 5-year-olds in our Ontario schools. And Jim has had a very long career in education. In his 37 years, he's had roles such as teacher, school administrator, superintendent, and director of education for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board and the Peel District School Board. Jim has also been an incredible champion for young children and families. He has had leadership roles in the Success by Six organizations in Ottawa and Peel region, as well as leadership roles in the Council for Early Child Development. And last year, when Jim was the president of the Canadian Association of School Administrators, he planned 2 national conferences related to the early years. On a personal level, it was wonderful working with Jim while he was at the Peel Board, and we certainly miss you at Peel, Jim, but we know that you now have taken on a much more important role in supporting young children and families across the entire province. So please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Jim Grieve.
Nice intro. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where are the men? Thank you. And how are the children? And how are the children? When I worked with Dan Offer, Dr. Dan, as everyone knew him in Ottawa and in Hamilton, Dan opened a conference we sponsored with Success by Six in Ottawa, and he opened that first day by saying, "How are the children?" which is a greeting in many villages in Africa, maybe even Australia, but it certainly should be a greeting I think that we should be using all the time. How are the children is probably one of the more important questions we can ask ourselves. And in this room, I know what the answer is, and I know that you work tirelessly to make sure that that answer is positive as we can make it for children and families. Today is about play, though. And this is an awkward room to do a whole lot of playing. I was going to bring all my Lego and all my good stuff and put you to work. I am going to put you to work. Oh, no. Yes, I am going to put you to work very briefly. I've already put you to work, those of you who've been watching the screen, and we'll come back to some of that in a minute. But today is about intentional play-based learning, and it's about the early learning program. So you'll get facts and details, if that's what you came for, about where we're going with early learning. So those of you who really want that content, we'll get there. But this is about the whole day and the whole conference, and the amazing workshops that you're going to have is about play. And so play and toys and all of those joyful ways that children learn is so important to us. Now, hopefully you've got something to write with. I think we gave you something to write with. Excellent. And hopefully you've got something to write on. If you don't, I come prepared with 3x5 or 5x6, I guess they are. So if anyone needs one of these, just put your hand up, and thank you very much. If you need these are up here. Oh, sure, just if anybody needs it. So listen very carefully, because I'm only going to say the rules once. Okay? Anxiety going up? Not in a kindergarten and not in a childcare, wouldn't the kids would be saying, okay, get on with it, Jim. All right. Here's my rule. My rule is with the diagram that you see, I and an X, add one line and make it 6. It's the only rule I've got. Now, those of you who really want to understand if the rule really is as simple as that will say, you know, can I work with a partner? Yes. The only rule is one line and make it 6. Okay? I'm going to give you 1 minute to get on that. One line and make it 6. You were into it right away. I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to make sure that you understand the rule is just adding one line to this image and make it 6. How many of you have found a solution? You are brilliant. Fantastic. Now, I want you to find another solution. Okay? So, you can work with a partner, you can team up, anything you want. You can move. For those of you who are having problems with the first one, you can move it around, turn it upside down, do whatever you like, but you've got 1 more minute. Same rule. Find another one. How many of you have come up with at least 2 solutions? 2 solutions. Oh, I hear you're still working, but I can't give you any more time. I'm sorry. 2 solutions again? Would someone like to come up and just draw 1 solution on my flip chart? Who'd like to do that? Excellent. Would you like blue or green? Your choice. Oh, of course, my favorite. Do it nice and big so everyone can see, right there. Excellent. Excellent. How many had that one? Very good. Who has a second solution? Different. Would you like to come up? Would you like to come up? Good. Are you okay with blue, or would you like to? Okay, me too. It's my other favorite color. Do you want to use that one or this one? Your choice. Okay.
It's one line.
Yes, but what do you think? Yes or no? Okay, we'll take your one line. It's okay. Very nice. Anyone got another solution? This time we'll do it in green again. Come on up. One times 6 equals 6. Do you know, does anyone have another one? I know this is a room filled with, do you want to come up? This will be interesting. Everyone's saying, how can there be another one?
You might not agree, but...
As long as it follows my one rule.
Depends on what you look at a rule.
Oh, depends on what I look at as a rule, says she.
I'm talking one line in a mathematical equation.
How many lines was that you put on there?
That's one line, and that's another line in
Oh.
a mathematical equation.
I like it. Okay, so this is Ix, 9. This is one line. The second line of the equation is minus 3 equals 6. Okay. So you've got rules too. Oh, VI, right? So they're using a line of an equation. Nice. There's an alternative. Is this one okay too? I think. So there's an alternative. We started off with IX. This isn't a piece of paper, so I can't fold it. But if you put one line like that, folded it, flipped it over, what do you have? 6. So it is so neat. Dare I ask, is there any other solution that you've come up? Oh, fantastic. We can go all day on this. Is this a Robin Williams solution? Let's get you to use the big board. Okay.
So I looked at these as individual sticks.
Yes.
And so when you said make 6 with one line, 6 sticks.
Fantastic. Way to go. 6 sticks. She started off with only 3 sticks and went all the way around in one continuous stick and made 6. Okay, one more. You got another one? If there was ever proof that the wisdom of the crowd rules, honestly, you can just do it right in there. Okay. It's perfect. Not that one.
Okay.
We'll leave an indelible mark at Charles Sturt.
So we started with 1.
Yes. Yes.
And I just added 1, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, we'll take it. We'll take it. Let's have a hand for those who stood up and came up to the front. So this was literacy, this was numeracy, this was play. This was all about engagement. How did you feel when we started? What was the experience like? You know, maybe some frustration, maybe just complete disbelief that anything other than putting the S in front of the IX, that there could be any other possible ways of thinking of this. Maybe a little trial and error, of course. Some inquiry, some problem solving. We used our senses. We tapped into previous experience. You did all of those things that you know you want children to be doing every day through the kinds of work that they do every day. And did we learn anything? Yeah, I think we learned something. I certainly learned 4 more solutions than I brought myself, which is fantastic. It helped me understand that there are always different ways of seeing an issue, always different ways of experiencing or using a tool in a different way. And very much, I believe that is very much what play is all about. Children learn about play not by talking about it. They learn about play by playing with concrete, not abstract. And whenever children play, they are completely absorbed, and you watch this every day. They play something, and they often have a toy, but sometimes they don't have anything at all. They just play. And usually when children play, they play with something in their hand. Even our simple little game had something in your hand. You had your pencil and a piece of paper, or a marker and the appropriate marker and the appropriate whiteboard at the front. Now you might point out that sometimes children play with each other and they don't have a toy, and that is absolutely the case. But most of the time, play requires some manipulative, some toy. And if they don't have it readily at hand, children will pick up just about anything, and it becomes whatever their imagination wants it to become. And that's the joyful part of play and about learning. If we think about toys as the way of understanding play, immediately we see factors that make play so important for learning. A toy can be transformed in a child's play to many different things. That stick or that small stone can become anything the children need to play. when they play together. But toys aren't just random objects. Many of them have remarkable, remarkable histories. And I'm going to take you a bit on a journey of some of that and see if this doesn't resonate with all of us in the room, because we represent so many different ages and stages in terms of when we had a childhood and how we grew up and the kinds of toys we grew up with. When I was a young guy, the big toys in my life early on tended to be more outdoorsy things. So my favorites, honestly, were a baseball glove, a toboggan, skis, those kinds of things. But for inside, it was very much working with an electric train, which I loved, and Meccano. It's hard to find Meccano, but you can still find Meccano. Do you know what Meccano is? Meccano is the most frustrating little wee thing. I mean, it's all about nuts and bolts, right? And perforated pieces of steel, and putting these little pieces of steel together. And you need a lot of fine motor to be able to get these things started. I'm pretty good at putting nuts and bolts together now because of that. I didn't know at the time, probably didn't care. I was playing, when I was playing with all those nuts and bolts and Meccano, it got its start in 1901. It was invented by Frank Hornby. He was a clerk in Liverpool. And he invented a patented toy called Mechanics Made Easy, based on the principles of mechanical engineering. Unbelievable. And it was a model construction kit consisting of perforated metal strips, plates and girders and wheels and pulleys and gears. You know, it wasn't until I looked into the history that I remembered, you know, the hardest part about Meccano was getting these little things together and making sure they'd stay together. The second hardest part was tying the little piece of string that was going to be your pulley and getting a knot in it so it would stay together. That just struck right in the middle of me when I read that in the history, and I thought, oh, I remember hours and hours and hours, and then they'd slip off. Anyway, it's a good toy. 1901, they still make Meccano. It's still available if you go to Mastermind or some of these places, and it's still built exactly the same specifications as it was in 1901, unchanged. Very interesting, and you won't find that in your centers, and you won't find it in our kindergarten rooms either. But it was a favorite toy of mine. By the time my own son, who now teaches kindergarten in the north part of Peel, when he grew up, his favorites at that point, you'll age and stage him as well, maybe not, were Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Well, hold on. It's still Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Kids are still rolling into my wife's kindergarten class with Turtles, really, and with Transformers. It's still going on. However, back in the 80s, this is what Scott was playing with, and with his Game Boy, and his building toy of choice was Lego. And one of the questions I had at the front when you were coming in was, you know, what was the toy of the century? The toy of the century, the 20th century, was Lego. Did you know that there are 63 pieces of Lego per person on the planet? That's how pervasive this stuff is. And frankly, if we'd been at tables today, I'd have had you building with Lego, because it's a favorite of mine too. I loved playing with the kids when they got the Lego out. And each of us dig into a basement somewhere, dig into a former playroom somewhere, dig into any of the cupboards you have in your center or in the kindergarten, you'll find plenty of Duplo or Lego. And that's what accounts for 63 Lego blocks per person on the planet. Amazing. I love that Lego has as its company mission statement, children are our role models. Well, you know, it seems to me that that's exactly the way we need to think about not only play-based learning, but about how we, you know, how are the children? They're our role models. We need to learn from them as much as we can try and teach them. So Lego, you know, was the absolute toy of the century. When my daughter was growing up, a couple of years before my son, my daughter's also a kindergarten teacher, or she works actually in a readiness center, which is phenomenal. Just we'll talk about that. Right in Peel, there are phenomenal hubs and readiness centers. You need to ask people in this room who staff them and who run them just exactly what they are. But they're preschool centers, amazing centers for children and parents and caregivers. But when she grew up, the big toy, of course, there was strawberry shortcake. That's still around. Precious Places, still around. And not surprisingly, a blackboard. She loved having a blackboard so she could teach school to my poor, unwilling son who got taught school every day from age 1 to 3. But the toy for her, and I remember this because I remember lining up, in 1983 was Cabbage Cat, right? So I still see Belle Ruth when I go over to Susan's house. And Belle Ruth, it comes with a name, that's the name you're given. I remember lining up. There were shortages, there were fist fights, I didn't see those. There were fist fights to get that toy. What was the one for this year? There was one this year. It was a fur thing, right? That lives and moves and meows and does things, and you have to look after it, right? Furby? Sort of a hamster-looking thing, right? We don't know the name, so that's not boding well. Okay. Zuzu Pet. What will be next year's toy? These are the kinds of toys, though, that engage kids, and they remember them for life. I remember mine. You remember yours. Here's some others. You know, it's really neat. One of the questions I had at the front of the event was, you know, what is the first animated movie that won an Oscar? And it was Toy Story. Toy Story. Here you have a movie, you know, that brings forward from the mind of the person who generated this beautiful movie all of the toys that surrounded him when he was growing up. And you can think of Buzz Lightyear, and you can think of all of those, and the cowboy. Woody, yes, of course, Woody, and all those others who were part of his growing up experience. So this was as popular as it was with kids. It was really even more popular, I think, with the parents who took their kids to that movie. $200 million that thing grossed. And that doesn't count DVDs. And the sequel that's coming out now. It introduced a really neat retro toy called Mr. Potato Head. Okay, so how many Mr. Potato Heads are there in the world? I have no idea, but I know that in every one of your centers and in your kindergartens and in your basements, there's a Mr. Potato Head. It started life in 1949, and it used a real potato with body parts. It wasn't until 1964 that Hasbro said, a little worried about the wastage of food here, so let's go with something a little more plastic. And so they have a plastic body. Those parts are interchangeable as well, and Mr. Potato Head continues as a perennial favorite of many children. So I'm certain that many of you also are aware of what the best-selling vehicle in North America is. I mean, we play trivia all the time. Do you know what it is? Best-selling vehicle. Oh, close. Hot Wheels. It's not the Ford F-150. No, it's not that. And it's not the Toyota Camry, or no, not anymore. It is Little Tyke's Cozy Coupe. I think I've got a picture of a Little Tyke's. That's Lego. That's Belle Ruth. Those are the boys. There's Mr. Potato Head, and there are 10 million on the sidewalks of North America. It's really scary, actually. 10 million. You know, toys are part of a child's life, and part of play is engaging with the toy, but it stimulates imagination and creativity as they interact with the real world. In their imagination, the same toy can be many, many different things. Toys come alive in children's minds. Think of the Winnie the Pooh book, and think of how all of that came from the imagination of Eddie Milne. Think of Toy Story and how that all came alive, just from the experiences of having the toys around him as the writer-producer. You know, think of this brilliant comic strip, Calvin and Hobbes. I don't know whether you're a fan. I like Calvin and Hobbes. In the eyes of adults, Hobbes is a benign stuffed animal, but to Calvin, This is a real tooth, claw, and fur-bearing tiger, bigger than Calvin himself. Toys are often the bridge between a young child's inner life and the world outside themselves. And again, we know from brain research the importance of imagination, creativity, problem solving as a connect for learning. Very important. So toys help children experience and explore the world, but most of all, toys are fun. Play is fun, and learning equals play, and play equals learning. That's the whole point of this. For young children, learning is absolutely fun. We need to make sure that we capitalize on that sense of fun. And I think we could do no better than capitalize on Lego's mission statement. Children are our role models. In fact, I can honestly say that's the approach that those of us who are trying to put together Charles and the Premier's vision around early learning have adopted. It really needs to be fun. And who says it stops at the end of kindergarten, by the way? What happened to grade 1 and 2 having a little bit of fun? That's my next challenge. First we take kindergarten, then we take grade 1 and 2. So, you know, one of the practical considerations in the new program, and the new program is up and out. I love the new program. It's got a great big long huge title, and I'll tell you what the title is shortly, and why it was sort of committee that put that together, but that's okay. It doesn't matter what it's called. The program I love because it's a combination of elect that comes from the child care world, or the framework, whatever you want to call it. It comes from K-2006, and it comes from Charles' own writing around every child, every opportunity. All three are represented. There's a website I'll show you in a second. If you haven't seen the new program, you've got a copy, it's fantastic. Then I think you're going to like this. I like it a lot. And it's going to answer a lot of those questions about, well, from ECEs and from teachers specifically, about what's this going to look like? And you and I know that there's lots of anxiety out there right now. There's anxiety on the part of teachers who say, I don't want this new professional who knows early learning and developmental strategies coming in and taking over my program. And then you've got the ECE world saying, and I've said this to many of you when you've heard me before, I don't want to be anybody's assistant. I am an educator. I want to come in and work side by side with another professional and work to help children play and learn and grow. And that's why we're doing this. The only reason we're doing this is so that more children are more successful in life. And I said last week when I was in Halton, this is not about EYEON scores. And this is not about saving money. And it's not about free care during the day. This is about making sure that children and families get the support they deserve and need in order for those children to be more successful. And there are economists around the world now who get this. When you read James Heckman's work, and he was asked to produce material for the World Bank, he showed the investment in early childhood education is a complete no-brainer. Somewhere between $7 and $17 return for every dollar you invest in early childhood. The good news is, in his report, he also said there's still hope for those of us who work in K-12 education. There's still lots of brain malleability and still lots of opportunity. It just takes longer and more money. And he implied those of us who are now past school experiences, saying our brain is still malleable till 99, so you can still learn. Again, it just takes just a touch longer and a little bit more effort and maybe a little more resource to get it. The big return on investment is with 0 to 4, 0 to 6. It's just an unbelievable opportunity. So the human brain has a biological need to learn. We know that when children are born, they're born with possibility. Only about 20% of that brain is actually sort of, Fraser Mustard would call it, hardwired at birth. And that's an important hardwiring at birth, because lots of the trajectories for behavior and association and all those good things are really very firmly set in some respects, but there's ample left ample left for ECEs and for parents and for teachers and for professionals to work with and make sure that children can be successful. That's the whole underlying notion behind early learning. What I like about having fun and about learning, I better catch up with myself, and you know Charles' report already, I'm not going to give you that. He was here last year, I know, talking about the vision, and here am I working with Charles and speaking to him every day, but having the luxury of working with you and making this become a reality. Are there bumps in the road? Yes, I acknowledge those, and I saw your questions. And we'll talk about some of those. But the little team that I've got down at Queen's Park that's working on this is amazing. And they come at life with the philosophy that I've just talked about, and they come at life in making sure that we land this appropriately, and that we land it so well that after 2 years, nobody would even consider pulling it back. It just doesn't make any sense. That said, we've got lots and lots and lots of work to do. Our desired end state, I've just said, our desired end state is to make sure families are supported and more children are more ready for life. That's a huge issue for me. I want to make sure that that happens. And that we truly are creating our best future, not to coin a phrase from Charles. So the implementation of full-day learning begins in September. We can now talk openly because the legislation has passed second reading. It's gone through committee. It is now going to be called, listen to this, it's unbelievable, the Full Day Early Learning Statute Law Amendment Act. Fortunately, that doesn't spell anything nasty, to 2010. This past Monday, the Standing Committee on Social Policy met for clause by clause. That means they reviewed every item in the bill for consideration. We are waiting for third reading, I suspect. I'm pretty sure it's going to be next week, and then we can move. It will be law, and it means a lot to us because it will articulate a couple of things that you're interested in. It will articulate the nature of the program inside the Education Act and out of the DNA Act, and it will articulate, along with a compendium document we're putting together now, what the roles really are, who does what, who's responsible for what, but not to so fine a detail that we can't leave some of the magic of education and teaching to the teams that are put together. That's really, really important. So, as I said, Bill 242 takes 4- and 5-year-olds out of the DNA and puts them under the jurisdiction of the Education Act. It insists that there will be in the early learning program 2 professionals, an ECE and a teacher working side by side. The ratio there is 26:2. And I know there are issues with that. I mean, my 3 family members are all kindergarten teachers, all of whom say every weekend when we get together, 26 is too many bodies in a room, and 20 has been, or 18 or 15 has been fine, thank you very much. 26:2 is the ratio that we've been given, and to greater or lesser degrees, that's probably where it will land. It will be higher, a little bit lower, I hope, over time. In the extended day program, which runs from, we'll say, from 7 in the morning till school begins, and from 3:30 in the afternoon until pickup from parents, that will be the domain of early childhood educators, and it will be run by early childhood educators. And a very important concept in terms of having the full day, extended day opportunity. In year 1, there will be some uptake on the extended day. Frankly, right now, parents are a little confused. They don't want to let go. You know, there's an old expression, how can you seek new horizons if you're afraid to let go of the shore? I don't blame them for not letting go of the shore yet, because they don't know about subsidies, and they don't know whether the program is going to actually take off in September. They know the full day will, but they're not sure about the extended day. And they're not sure what the fee is going to be. And so all of those I understand, and we'll land those as much as we can, promote them as much as we can. In the first year, we'll make sure that we focus on the main thing, and that is making sure that we've got a really fabulous in-school full-day program going, and as many extended day programs as we possibly can. And, you know, the other reason they don't want to let go of that shore is they're not sure whether it's going to be full school year or full year. Big difference, because they're getting full year now. Don't worry, I'm not ignoring special needs and subsidies. We'll get to that issue in just a moment. So there are two professionals in the room. And the new legislation makes them jointly responsible for a number of things. Let's just talk for a moment, if I can, about the two professionals, see if I can catch up. And by the way, this program, in case you missed it at the beginning, is going to be joyful, experiential, and play-based. It's not going to have kids sitting at desks with pencils they can't hold, writing letters on dotted lines, and coloring mittens. That's not what this is about. But you and I realistically know that that happens. And it doesn't happen because people intentionally are not going this route. They're feeling the pressure from standardized tests, and they're feeling pressure from all sorts of places. We need to help, all of us. We need to help kindergarten teachers and grade 1 and grade 2 understand that there's lots of opportunity and learning will happen. And these are little readers and writers as soon as they walk in the door. They just don't have to be holding a pencil to prove it. You know? Anyway, we'll not digress. So the two professionals in the room, early learning, here's what they do. They will jointly develop and deliver the daily activities in the classroom, including an emphasis on spontaneity to respond to children's needs and interests. They will organize the indoor and outdoor learning environments, and they'll use a range of pedagogical strategies, all of which I think are so important to making sure that a child is experiencing and learning every day. If we get to the point where a child learns and grows and feels valued every day, I'll be a very happy person, because that's the goal. We want every child who enters those doors to feel that way. And they'll monitor and assess children's progress using observation and documentation. So there are some delineations that are separate. So an ECE, for example, based on unique training and qualifications out of those wonderful ECE programs, bring their knowledge about early child development. Very important. They bring knowledge about observation and about assessment. Very important contributions to the total learning environment in that classroom. They're responsible for age-appropriate program planning, for documentation techniques, and health promotion. All of those things are very much a part of what an ECE brings through that training that they have. They, along with the teacher, take this holistic and integrated approach to early learning. It's not, it has to be holistic. We're looking at the whole child and making sure that the child is profiting and having that wonderful experience. And we're trying to develop, as kindergarten teachers already do, physical, cognitive, linguistic, emotional, social, creative development and well-being for the child. The new legislation gives the ECEs, and this may not appear very important, but it gives them the access right to the OSR, Ontario Student Record. Well, up to now, it's only been teachers, principals, and parents that could do anything with the OSR. It's really important for a professional to know that they have access to all the documentation. And sadly, many of our little guys and little gals in kindergarten have pretty thick files by the time they get to kindergarten. It's very important to know what's gone on in terms of special needs and supports in a young child's life. ECEs need that and will have that. They'll also take that knowledge and understanding and the extended day program, which is a compendium of the program that's just been released, and use that in the extended day so that it is consistent and it fits neatly with the program that's going on in the school hours. What are teachers responsible for? Teachers, I should be able to see that, can't I? Teachers are responsible for the long-range planning. They always have been. They have to be responsible to the principal for sort of laying out the structure and framework for how the year is going to look and how some of those expectations in this new program are actually going to be accomplished over the year, and to plan that. That's good news. And how it fits with grades 1 and 2 and beyond. They're required to provide effective instruction along with the ECE. They're required to evaluate the progress and development of the children, along with the ECE, and to report on that, along with the ECE. The teacher has to put the report together, but they'll do that with the ECE, and both will report to the parents when there's a parent interview held. Very important. So you no doubt now know that the curriculum will be play-based. That is absolutely what is written into the new program. It's an intention. And you can see the content areas represented in the new program, without downloading it, are listed for you in front. And they're around personal social development, language, math, science and technology, the arts, and of course health and physical activity. Those are not new areas for those of you who teach kindergarten. Those are already in the K-2006. What you're going to like about the new program, as it's laid out, is the K-2006 expectations are now matched with elect developmental stages side by side. I think it's a remarkably great document. I didn't write it, I can say that. I think it's a remarkably great document. So those are the expectation areas. Within each of these, there's a big idea. Sounds familiar. And I'm not going to go through those big ideas. I know you know all the big ideas in program. So there are overall expectations with breakdowns of specific expectations and assessment strategies, and some examples of what you might see children doing if they're moving along that continuum. Again, I think a good, helpful piece of advice. And lots of people in this room have contributed and have seen this in its draft form. It will remain in draft for at least a year. Some were thinking we might leave it for 2 years. And the objective there is to let you take it for a test drive. Try this out and come back a year from now and give some advice, and come back a year later and give more advice before we lock it down into being, you know, the program for early learning across the province. Nothing wrong with leaving it in that draft form. Just a couple of things, if I can get that to advance. One of the things I've said just about every time I've spoken since I started in November is that I am with the ministry, I'm not from the ministry. I mean, I actually am from the ministry now, but I'm more with the ministry because until really a few months ago, I sat in seats like you do right now. And most of my career, as Amy said, was spent as an educator, as someone who promoted early child development, and came to sessions like this to make sure that we were, you know, catching up on the latest advocacy strategies and making sure that we were going in the best possible direction for children and families. So when you have issues, and when you've flooded me with all of the questions that are unanswered or the communication issues that need to be improved, it's really important for you to know that I take that very seriously. You know, in my 150 days with 155 days with the ministry so far, but who's counting, you know, compare that with 13,500 days as someone who sat where you sit. Very important for you to know that when you give me that kind of advice, and I'm the point of contact, I understand that, that advice is going straight to people like my minister, our premier, our work team, my little work team down at Queen's Park. Very important that you don't stop the flow of questions, critique, and advice. So, you know, it's a very easy email address to know. It's jim.grieve@ontario.ca. You can keep doing that. And by the way, we'll send a little survey monkey out after if it's not too much of an imposition, and get some sense of some of the questions that were answered today and some that you still have that need to be answered. So we're at a point now where we have program, we have legislation, probably early next week. We have a role definition for ECEs and teachers that is ready to go. We have most things in place. Schools were chosen. Schools are rolling out in September. School boards are struggling at this point, but accomplishing today, I hope, round 2. They're looking at phase 2 schools and getting ready to launch those and send them to us. So I've talked a lot about where we are. I'm very pleased that we're as far as we are in as short a time as we are, but I know every night when I go home and talk about this with a person who is very close to me and who is getting early learning in September, that there are still a multitude of questions. There's training coming. The whole month of May is dedicated to training people on the new program and training ECEs and teachers together in that program, at least by board and board representative, so that that training can carry on in June with all involved. There's training in the summer. I know summer institutes are not your favorite necessarily, but the summer institutes that I'm familiar with from my Peel and Ottawa days were full to oversubscribed like that. Regionally, there will be summer institutes run through the month of July. They will be 3-day institutes, and we start in Thunder Bay, I think, early in July. There are a number of dates that will be published shortly. There are opportunities, again, for teachers and ECEs to come together and learn about the program, but learn more about how two professionals can work together. And then there's an implication we have for some final thoughts and training on that funny day this year in September, when all of us in education have to be into our schools a day before Labor Day. It's one of those funny years again. And that PA day will be, I hope, at least half of it dedicated to the teacher ECE teams who can come together and really say, okay, where we're going on day 1 through day 5. Let's make sure that we have our act together. So that's coming as well, and then much more training throughout the next year. I am going to stop at this point. I just want to understand, or I just want you to understand that I'm coming at this joyfully. I love this work, and it is only because I want more children to be more successful in life. And with your help, we're going to get there. It's so important. It's so important that we spend time together. Right now is a great opportunity. Today you're going to see all kinds of wonderful workshops. It's so important we keep the focus on children and families and on the kind of play-based learning that we need to have in our programs. Thank you very much. We're going to do questions. I only have one slight rule with questions. And some of you have heard my little rule, not to go back to the rule I had at the front with one line. You've thought about your question for a long time, and therefore you've probably thought of a couple of suggestions or solutions that don't cost $1 billion or whatever. So if your question also has a little bit of a, why don't you think about doing something like this, like a solution? Great. So, what are your questions? And I think they want you to use the mics. Mic number 1. It's coming. Just hold on. There you go.
Test?
Yep.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
In terms of the extended day learning program, are we looking at, this is a logistics question that a teacher asked me recently, are we looking at using the same space in the actual kindergarten room for the before and the after?
Funny, that's a question I get very frequently in the evening from someone who says, how will I ever set up my room if there's a program going on in there? I don't have a perfect answer for you because it really depends, and it really literally does depend on the number of people who sign up for the program and the amount of space, appropriate space inside a school. And we range in this province from having gobs of space all over the place and rooms that are the size of this for one kindergarten room, and I've been in rooms like that, which is amazing. Someone was saying they were at the Bruce Street School. Go take a look at the size of the Bruce Street School, room. To rooms more commonly in Peel District School Board where they are new classrooms, but they are not kindergarten classrooms, and they are an eighth the size of this. So it really depends on the space. Ideally, it will be, if there's modest as we think there will be take up in the first year, it will be located in a place that's appropriate for the program, but not necessarily in the kindergarten room, not necessarily. But that falls to the local decision making.
So the lunchroom area or the library?
Yeah, I'm not sure library's perfect place for it either. I mean, it's great for literacy, but I think you need, in the morning. If you've watched some of these programs up in Ogden Street School in Thunder Bay or in Bruce Street School, they really need a different space with just the same kind of equipment. You need lots of experiential equipment for that morning program as well. So I'm not sure library with sand and water, no, I'm not so sure. Yes.
Hi, Jim. Jennifer Powell-Freilich. I'm the supervisor of the Early Child Development Program at the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board, and I also manage the Parenting and Family Literacy Centers.
Yeah,
and something that we have found really helpful in the PFLC Provincial Early Learning community is the establishment of an e-learning site on the ministry website. And there's so much sharing going on among boards and among colleagues, and everybody seems to have a little bit of information. But to consolidate that learning and that dialogue, I wonder if the ministry would consider setting up an e-learning site so we could all go to the same place and share information. Yeah,
we're with you 100%. Just hasn't been quite on the radar scope all along. Yes, we'll have that up as soon as we can. We've just put a, what do they call it, a request for interest, RFI, out to the colleges and universities who do training for ECEs specifically for release of some of their video content. Some of those wonderful videos that can say in 2 minutes of video or DVD what it takes 100,000 words to describe when you're talking about play-based learning. So that's the content we'd like to have up there, along with maybe a sort of a threaded wiki that people who have questions, yeah, it'll be interactive.
And right. Coincidentally, the person who set it up for us is Kelly McDonald, who's sitting right beside me.
Okay, we need to talk. We need to talk. Good suggestion. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, the summer institutes,
yep.
There are a lot of speech and language pathologists that work with preschool speech and language services and who work in school boards, and they're very involved in preschool and in kindergarten. I think it would be important for the speech and language pathologists to also have the opportunity to attend the summer institutes so that we can have a shared knowledge base with our colleagues in those classrooms.
We'll make it available. I mean, it just makes sense.
Do
I promise? Scout's honor. We'll make it available. They fill up fast, though. So it won't be me that holding you out. It'll be the numbers, I know. But yeah, good idea. I got to write that idea down. Mic number 2.
Hi, this is regarding French immersion. You say that the L program will be implemented completely after 5 years. So in about 2015, all the kindergarten classrooms across Ontario will have a full-day learning. How will that look like for French immersion? I mean, we will be teaching French immersion all day. Will we have an ECE worker in the classroom who will have French, who will be instructing in French? Will we have support for that?
So you already know the answer. Or I think you already hope you know the answer, right? So let me just start from another angle and come back to your question then. The Francophone boards are really petrified that what has been a fairly significant draw on the Francophone population, having full-day early learning, and they've done an amazing job with it, and we've learned a lot from them in this process. They see that advantage or that attraction for Francophone parents somewhat disappearing as the rest of the province comes up to meet the program. There are 2 problems with that. One is the supply of ECEs who are bilingues, right? And that is a serious, it's been a serious problem since day one because there are only 2 colleges, Boreal and La Cité, that do the training of French language ECEs. So we've talked with both those colleges and with the Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities. We're working on finding strategies to augment the numbers that are graduating through that. I'm still on the Francophone boards. They are the biggest limitation for ECE training, like any training, are the number of placements that are available. Because it doesn't matter how much theory you give people, the real learning beyond the theory is being inside good quality, high quality placements. So the Francophone boards are opening their doors and encouraging their schools to open their doors to ECE candidates. That way we're going to have more. So the reason they're petrified is that immersion schools also are coveting Francophone ECEs. And they do see some issues with both supply and distance, where a Francophone parent currently will drive or bus their child 20 kilometers to get to the Francophone school. With this equalization of access, it becomes moot whether a parent drives actually the 20 kilometers to the Francophone school or goes around the block to the immersion school. So that's the issue right now that they're struggling with. I understand that struggle because they're looking not to be assimilated. It's a Franco-Ontarian population, and very important that we maintain that in some fashion. They've also got strategies around that. That said, 5 years from now, immersion from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. delivered by ECEs and great native-like speaker teachers. Yes?
Merci.
That's the goal. Yes?
Hi, Wendy Goulden with Waterloo Region. We just wondered if there was an opportunity to clarify, Jim, the funding provided to school boards for the new classrooms. There's been quite a bit of confusion around additional allocation of resources, and I'm speaking really around materials and equipment that are really essential in order to provide a play-based learning context. So there's been some confusion. Can you clarify that or no?
I can. Yes, I can. So let me do it this way. The good news is we managed to convince the capital branch to build in equipment money out of capital, because there's no more money in our operating monies that are sent out. And it equates to roughly about $10,000 per early learning classroom, which, you know, on the surface is fantastic. I mean, as soon as some kindergarten teachers heard that, they said, well, we can relax. There are pretty strict and onerous rules and regulations around that, and I'm not going to tell you how to do an end run on any of that. I wouldn't be a good ministry person in doing that. But the money is coming to the board. I tried to get it sweatered to every classroom in every early learning setting, but apparently they can't do that. So it comes to the board. It is for major capital improvements. So if you're adding, if you're adding a washroom, if you're, doing fairly significant changes, if you're adding cubbies, if you're buying a slew of trikes, if you're, there are a whole bunch of things that can potentially fall in there as capital equipment. As a director, former director of a board, taking that money, there are two things I would keep in mind. One, make sure that it gets to early learning. And two, you already have capital dollars inside a board's budget. There are lots of things you can do with those capital dollars to make sure that these classrooms are properly set up. And there are opportunities, I think, within a board's budget to shift from one area to another to make sure that more puzzles, more white glue, more consumables are available, because the toys and the materials are going to be overused, more used than they are now.
Or they're just not present.
Yeah, so I think there are ways, and I can't tell you what they are, but I think there are ways within a board to take that $10,000 per classroom allocation and make good use of it for capital, but also free up some other dollars.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay.
Thanks.
One more? Oh boy. Can we do two quickies? Okay. So first.
Sorry. Good morning. Earlier, as you were talking about the revisions to the legislation, you left me, perhaps incorrectly, but you left me with the impression that there might be a softening around the absolutes of the extended day. I'm giving reference to your comment about in the first year the focus will be on the core and not so much on the, or maybe a little bit less on the extended day piece. Could you comment a little bit
that's
more on
absolutely not what I intended to communicate. The full day, the full vision is what we support. We want the boards to own these programs. The problem in this first year is there's so much to land in terms of setting fees and determining how special needs will work that parents are really struggling with making decisions, and I know that care providers and centers are already putting a fair bit of pressure for some certainty as to who will actually be coming here. So I'm being realistic that the first year will be probably more modest, but there is no backing away, and the legislation will show you there's no backing away from ultimately boards will own both the before and after, and we'll be moving to all 4- and 5-year-olds having access to before and after. No backing away from that. Just wanted you to know that realistically it's, in the first year, going to be lighter than we would expect.
Hi, Mr. Greaves. I'm Michelle Willem. I'm from the Peel District School Board. I'm very thrilled to be in the full day next year. But my question is, in our board, you know that we have our early literacy teachers and a variety of resource teachers, but I'm wondering if there's going to be specific resource teachers to support the teachers in kindergarten, especially with the growth of teachers in kindergarten, to support them specifically in kindergarten, like a kindergarten resource teacher. Is there plans for that? I'm hoping.
So until October, I probably could have answered that question, but I wouldn't dare to answer that question right now. Okay. But I hear the need, and I know that there are a number of people from the board here, including the lead for early learning, listening to what you're saying. To me, it makes good sense. You hope that you get lots of experienced people coming into the kindergarten. The reality is there are going to be some relatively new folks coming into kindergarten who need to know what play-based learning looks like and need that support. So I suspect that the ELTs and others will initially be those who will do that. I'd love to see a mentoring program that makes sure, I'm talking about kindergarten mentoring program, that really makes sure that an experienced kindergarten person, even if they're in another school, is matched up with someone who's relatively new at it. The board will have to answer that question, though. Thank you very much. Great questions.